Hey, thanks for checking out The Solid Verbal. Now would be a great time to subscribe to the channel for college football content all off season long.
Let's go back to Jaden Rashada. I know you want to talk more Jaden Rashada. I can't imagine you're not thinking to yourself, I'm so sick of talking about Jaden Rashada, but we're going to do it here because, as I mentioned at the very top, you kind of have to bucket a conversation like this into two camps, right? There is what happened last season, and then there is this big offseason story that, for many folks, I think outside the Florida bubble, they look at the Jaden Rashada thing in a similar way that many folks looked at the Florida State situation with Travis Hunter. Big recruit, it's working. Suddenly it's not, oh my gosh, now the bottom is falling out on this thing. The bottom sort of did fall out on this NIL agreement. Maybe you can speak a little bit more to the particulars about it, but the rumor was, $13 million offered in some way, shape, or form to Jaden Rashada, the blue chip quarterback recruit from California. Originally was going to go to Miami and then was going to go to Florida. And then it suddenly went boom. Now he's going to be playing at Arizona State, probably getting some time out there before long. What was your view as for how that all went down? How, if at all, it has affected the program, maybe how the outside is viewing Florida football versus the realities on the ground.
And the Gator Collective.
And the Gator Collective, right? I mean, there's just so much to discuss here. Where do you go first when you think of the Jaden Rashada story and either what folks like Dan and I got right versus what we get wrong?
Yeah, so admittedly, I'm pretty close with a lot of the people in the Gator Collective. So I'll put that out there, as a disclaimer if people want to, connect dots or whatever. But, I tried to follow as much as I could from every single angle of it, First of all, just being a fan of Florida, sure. But just trying to figure out what happened, where it went wrong, and the way it was presented to me in talking to different avenues of how it goes is, okay, yep, he flips from Florida to Miami, okay, and then there is an NIL agreement, and the $13 million was brought up, and then all of a sudden, when it's ready to come about with the first payment, it's, hey, wherever the money's coming from, hey, I never agreed to that. What do you mean you never agreed to that? The $13 million, no, that's not happening, by the way. The $13 million is not happening. Okay, so now it's left to scramble. How can we still make this happen? So the big thing was with that scramble, he still signs with Florida on early signing day.
Right.
And this story is already, behind the scenes out there. Hey, the money's not going to be there. The $13 million, it's not going to be there, but he's going to sign with Florida anyway. So, of course, there's the collective, the NIL side of it involved. There's a lawyer involved. There's agents involved on the Rashada thing. And, just the booster who, supposedly promised the $13 million is now withdrawn that. Okay, so now what can we do? What can we do to make this happen where you still end up at Florida and they could just never come to the agreement? And who's going to be responsible? We're in March now. That's back in late December, early January, and he ends up going somewhere else. I think if it's pretty much over with, if we were going to hear anything about fallout of this, as far as, there's legally nothing can really happen. It's is a player going to admit that they took some money? The money never happened, so that's why he's not at Florida. So that's the biggest thing there. No money ever switched hands, because that's why he's not at Florida right now. But somewhere along the way, there was a disconnect of, hey, this money's going to be there. Now it's not there. Right. And the NIL, the Gator Collective, they drafted the contract. The money's not coming from them. It was shared to them. Hey, you'll draft the contract. You have the template. Put this in there. Okay, we'll put it in there, because where it was coming from, who they were dealing with had pretty much dealt with almost every NIL deal up to that point. There was no reason not to trust it.
Right. Why did it fall through? Why did the money just dry up all of a sudden?
That's the part I can't get. All I know was, hey, this is the money we're telling you to put in there. I don't know if it was buyer's remorse. I don't know if Florida got a commitment from DJ Lagway at the same time, the high-profile 5-star quarterback for the 24 class. Is it, hey, we got this guy lined up next? Now we, quote-unquote, don't need Rashada for that much money anyway?
Right.
That's me guessing there. I don't know if that played into it or not. But as far as, look, the $13 million at first was unbelievable. Nobody was going to believe it. But asking around, digging around more, all the articles coming out from every other source out there, that money, somehow that number was real. Yeah. No matter how asinine it is, no matter if you want to believe it or not, somehow that number was real.
It's a big number.
It is a big number. It's an astronomical number. In some ways, I'm glad it didn't work out because not only for Florida, but how would that affect college football recruiting down the road? Hey, this Florida
it sets a market. Yeah,
this Florida quarterback got $13 million. Okay, now I want it. So don't forget about Florida on that angle. It was going to affect college football in some ways, but probably part of that, the fallout from it, from what I can gather, hasn't really hurt Florida. Florida's recruiting ranking for the 2024 class, I don't think it's going to be affected all this down by this all that much in the end. I think as we get through and all these visits start happening with other recruits and all that, do we get some message out there of maybe opposing coaches using this against Florida?
Well, that was actually going to be my question, not to interrupt you, but so the money dries up. This was a high profile kid. He's now going elsewhere. Is there any kind of longer term effect with respect to the Gator Collective, i.e. we can't take their word for it anymore? If I'm a recruit, do I really want to go there? Now, to your point, doesn't seem like that's really affected that many folks, if anybody. But it is a question that I'd imagine is kind of hanging out there, and certainly one in a competitive landscape like the SEC, you have to imagine other schools will try and use that against them.
Yeah, I think so. Spring visits will be starting to happen some more and more. Summer visits will start happening more and more. Is that the message we start getting? As of now, when they've had about 4 or 5 visit weekends so far since the new year, haven't heard too much about NIL affecting Florida. The Gator Collective is still going on. It's still doing deals. It's still offering, the NIL deals to current student athletes out there. So it hasn't really slowed down in that regard. But there are some changes coming there behind. Look, this opened eyes, at least for Florida, in behind the scenes a bit of how serious to take NIL and how much it's going to affect your recruiting class and how much it's going to affect the eyeballs on your program a bit. If anything, it could help in some regards to help get this cleaned up, get everybody on the same page, so everybody's on the same page moving forward and make sure something like this doesn't happen again. But I'm sure every other college program out there, they saw this happen and, hey, how do we make sure this doesn't happen to us? All in all, it may be a good thing overall for college football and for Florida in the end. We will have to see how it affects Florida in the immediate future of, how can they build their 24, 25 classes coming up, and maybe Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, Mike Norvell using this, and hey, those deals there may not be so good.
Well, the immediate fallout is probably Graham Mertz. Graham Mertz could be the starting quarterback first game come this September. How do you feel about that? Like, have you started trying to talk yourself into it? What is the Gator community saying about Graham Mertz as the potential starting quarterback? Because I got to say, there was nobody higher on Graham Mertz than I was. And people who listen to our show know I have talked ad nauseum about the 5-touchdown game he had against Illinois, and that just never really had much fruit beyond that, right? It kind of stopped there, and maybe it was a product of the offense, maybe it was a product of his development, but I find it really hard to get excited if I'm a Florida fan about Graham Mertz being the dude going into 2023.
Yeah, I agree. Wait and see is probably used too much for Gator Nation right now, but that is what it is. I think there's a little bit of excitement. We've done our Graham Mertz deep dive ins, and other podcasts and other avenues of media have as well. And look, it is truthful. The Wisconsin offense did him no favors. It's run on first down, run on second down. Hey, go complete 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8.
Yeah.
And barely do it off of play action, which he excelled in. But for whatever reason, a run-heavy offense didn't use play action. So, and now he was under center at Wisconsin a lot. He'll be in shotgun a whole lot more at Florida. They'll open up the offense a bit more compared to what Wisconsin did. But at the same time, did Wisconsin not open up the offense because of Graham Mertz? I think that's a fair
Chicken
question.
Or egg, right?
Right. Yeah. I think that is a fair question that we have to ask ourselves. And, I hate to take the easy way out, but there will be differences of the offense at Florida. Will that make a difference for Graham Mertz? So early on through spring camp right now, we are here, and he's pretty much the number one quarterback already ahead of Jack Miller. Really no surprise. I'm not a huge Jack Miller fan to begin with. And that was even before the Oregon State bowl game disaster last year. Yeah. But he's going to be the guy. The offense is going to ride or die with Graham Mertz. Him being healthy. for Gator fans, they do hope that it was the Wisconsin offense that held him back, that he can live up to that recruiting potential that he had and use his arm to advantage. And hey, look, credit to Wisconsin. I mean, they recruited him, and it was, he played in a more open offense in high school, and he goes, okay, well, Paul Chryst develops, quarterback's pretty good. He's got a track record there, but that offense didn't do him any favors. But at the same time, we don't know if it was a limitation of him.